Today I want to talk about a case that led to one of the biggest malpractice payouts in Nevada and the country, one of the biggest cases of negligence to patients that I've seen or read about, a case that affects many people in Nevada till this day, and a case that led to one of the biggest outbreaks of hepatitis C in the entire country. This case is linked to a Dr. Desai. And yes, it still affects people in Nevada today. It affects me and how I practice, and it affects many of my patients. And this case actually begins where 50,000 patients were given notifications by the Nevada Health Board that they could have had exposure to hepatitis B, hepatitis C, as well as HIV. Let's talk about the case of Dr. Desai.
Former doctor at the center of a massive hepatitis C exposure case has died while in prison custody. Prosecutors say Deepak Desai reused syringes on different patients at his endoscopy clinic back in 2007.
So initially, I'd never even heard of Dr. Deepak Desai. I'd recommend patients go get their colonoscopies, and every now and then patients will say, no, I'm not doing that. You know, I heard about that doctor were using instruments, that doctor were using needles. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm new to the area. I have no idea what's really going on. But by about the third patient just refusing right out and saying, no, I've heard about these colonoscopies and people getting hepatitis. I had to go research it myself. And that's when I found out why these patients were refusing to get colonoscopies and what happened in Nevada in the early 2000s, or at least when people found out what was happening in Nevada in the early 2000s. So who was Deepak Desai? He was an internal medicine doctor before becoming a gastroenterologist. That's usually how it works. He graduated medical school in 1972, and by 1983, he finished his gastroenterology fellowship. From there, he moved to Las Vegas and quickly established himself in the area, and by the 90s opened up one of his first practice. He actually became one of the most prominent physicians in the area and one of the most well-paid physicians in the area. By 2008, they estimated his net worth to be about $7 million. He was a big philanthropist. He was known all across the country and specifically in the Nevada area. However, at that same date, a lot of stuff hit the fan. So in 2007, several patients, about 7 of them, came down with hepatitis. And so they did contact tracing, trying to find out how these patients got hepatitis, where they got it from. One such patient was an ex-colonel. His name was Colonel Mina, a Filipino immigrant and actually a war hero. He went to his primary care physician with some complaints of abdominal pain, abdominal symptoms, and he was sent to a gastroenterologist. That gastroenterologist was Dr. Deepak Desai. Anyways, it was recommended that the patient get a colonoscopy, and that's just what he did. Soon after the colonoscopy was done, he had some complaints of fatigue, some weird abdominal pain different from his original complaint. Anyways, he went to another physician and he was diagnosed with hepatitis. And he states, through an interview I heard, that he felt it was something wrong with the colonoscopy. And once he was told that he had hepatitis C, that was kind of the beginning of the investigation into Dr. Deepak Desai. The sad thing is actually, if you watch the interview with Colonel Mina, he states that he immigrated to the United States because he thought it was a safe place. He felt safe with his family, and he was distraught about it. And I'll link the interview, but one of the things, I guess the reporter was interviewing said that he was just so distraught with hepatitis. One of the things was he didn't want to sleep with his wife, he didn't want to kiss his kids, and although there's precautions you can take for hepatitis C, he says, I'm not risking it with my family, and essentially kind of isolated himself. Sadly, he actually ended up going back to the Philippines to pass away and die, because at that time there was no treatment for hepatitis C. There is now. But that's what happened to at least one of the victims, you want to say, or patients of Dr. Desai. And this is actually where the investigation begins. Now again, remember, I said some 50,000 people were estimated to be at risk for hepatitis B, hepatitis C, and HIV. And although 7 people, actually 9 people, were estimated to have direct hepatitis C infections linked to Dr. Desai, they estimate that there could be about 100 at least. And that's just talking about hepatitis C alone, no other infection. At his trial, some 70 witnesses testified. It took about 7 weeks. Ultimately, Dr. Desai was sentenced for a life sentence linked to the outbreak of hepatitis C. And in fact, that is one of the biggest outbreaks of hepatitis C linked to a physician in America. So you can see how egregious the case is, how it was, how it affects many people. One of the things also, it's actually led to distrust amongst patients. It also makes me as a physician kind of worried because I know how I practice, I know what I do, but now I take my patient and I send them to a specialist and that specialist does them harm. That's on me, or at least I feel responsible for it. So you could see the ramifications of this. Dr. Desai ultimately was convicted on 27 counts. Also, I believe his nursing assistant was also convicted. So you can see the total ramifications of a case like this. So a little bit about hepatitis, viral hepatitis. And this is what this case is mainly about. So what is viral hepatitis? It's a virus that affects the liver. It causes the liver to become inflamed. It damages the liver. When the liver gets damaged, it starts to fibrose. The tissue of the liver changes, becomes harder, doesn't function as well. And that's what happens in hepatitis. The problem with hepatitis B and C, but specifically C, is it can be chronic. It can be asymptomatic, meaning you have no symptoms. Kind of lays dormant, causing liver damage. People can get symptoms, but like I said, a lot of the time these symptoms go unnoticed for a long time. You can have yellowing of the skin. You see somebody and they're jaundiced. Can cause abdominal pain in later stages. Usually when it starts to become active or maybe at the sign of infection, patients just have a general fatigue. They're feeling tired, all that kind of stuff. But there's no specific symptom or no bells and whistles going off telling you something's wrong with the liver or something's going on with it. So that's generally how hepatitis works. What is the ultimate fallout of this case? Well, Dr. Desai appealed, but he also died in prison. What else do we know? It actually led to one of the biggest malpractice cases in the United States. In the early 90s, Dr. Desai was let go by his insurance based on some of the practices he had at the time. Later, this same insurance company reinstated him, and that's how the lawsuit against the insurance company that insured him went on, leading to a $500 million payout. But what does this mean? Well, this case shows several things. One, why patients may not trust physicians, how physicians may not trust other physicians, how the ramification of one man can affect many people. Not just that, what do you think happened to insurance in the state of Nevada, right? A lot of insurance premiums could have gone up because of this case, because of the payout of this insurance company. It gets even worse because there was a lot newer regulations that came out just because of Nevada. There was a lot of changes. There's a lot of ways that physicians are allowed to practice, and it's harder. There's a lot more rules, a lot more red tape that people have to go through, both on the patient side and the physician side. Anyways, I just wanted to point out this one case and how it affects me and how it affects everybody. And it just shows you have to be careful about who you trust with your medical care. Until next time.